Hi guys, I'm Mike.
And I'm Mark.
And this is F1 Fanatics. Welcome back, guys, to another Feeder Fridays. Obviously, last week we started off our ones to watch where we looked at the F2 drivers who we thought were ones to watch in terms of the F2 Championship this year, and the guys we thought likelihood who have a chance of progressing to Formula 1 in 2021. This week, we have a guest with us to help because we're going to look at guys who will be competing in F3 as ones to watch, and also guys in other junior Formula who we just think are notable names that we think have got a bit of talent behind them, and you might want to keep your eye on for the future in motorsport. So our guest that we have on, he was part of the F1 Worldwide Fan Podcast when we spoke about F2 and F3, and that is David. So David, welcome back.
Hi. Glad to be back.
Thank you very much. I know that just as a motorsport fan in general, it's always just nice to kind of have a chat, isn't it?
I do enjoy chatting about racing cars,
yeah. It's a pretty good pastime to do. So we've got, obviously, David joining me and Mark, and so it will be the same structure as how we did the F2, where we will list out a driver and then we will kind of give some kind of notable achievements that they've done, and then we'll have a chat about that driver and why we think they are ones to watch. And so the first one, we're going straight in, like last time, we're going in with the big gun, and that is Yuri VIPS. He is 19 years old. He has had 2 seasons in F3, and his most notable success to date is the ADAC F4 Championship in 2017. So I'll move first to you, David. What are your thoughts on Yuri VIPS, and why does he make this ones to watch list?
Him and Marcus Armstrong very much hand in hand, as in battling for many years. One will win one will win another. Say he won the ADAC F4 in a very strong field. Last year, in Euro F3, he very, very nearly won Rookie of the Year. And last season, outside of Pramacar, he was very much the cast of the field. So he's, backed by Red Bull. They put their money on him for a good reason.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And Mark, your thoughts are building on that?
I mean, there's not much more to add other than it seems like Red Bull's future beyond Verstappen and Albon. It seems to be the most likely of their current junior Formula juniors, if that's what you want to call it, of their academy drivers who can make it to F1.
Yeah, I think...
Yeah, it's definitely top of the pile at the moment, that's for sure.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. He's certainly, out of the Red Bull juniors currently in the junior formula, he's certainly the most exciting and certainly looks to have the most pedigree. And we have him... It's pretty much confirmed, I think, that he will compete in the early part of the year in Super Formula. But Mark also thinks he will compete in F2 in what he calls doing a Pierre Gasly. So do you want to elaborate on that, Mark?
Basically, I think Red Bull's going to try to get him in as many large super license points championships as possible as an emergency. With 2021 coming up, they very could easily lose Gasly. I mean, Kvyat maybe not. They may replace Kvyat, but I think they're going to try build up VIPS' super license points for a 2021 emergency if he's needed drive. If he's not needed, I can see him staying in F2 in 2021, but if needed, I think they're going to try and get him the points as a emergency.
Yeah, I think that's fair in it. They tried to do that sort of thing with Dan Ticktum, didn't he, before obviously everything went south on that one, but obviously we discussed that in last episode, the trials and tribulations of Dan Ticktum. But just rounding off on Yuri VIPS, obviously we included him in this one, although he might be competing in F2, although he might still compete in F3 and maybe go for the championship, although a few of the big seats have been taken. So, would be interest on that front. But we need to put him somewhere, so we decided to put him in this video. But David, how do you reckon he will do in Super Formula?
Super Formula is a very tricky one. You've got drivers going into it who we think should do well and seem to struggle, and there's other guys who have, for budgetary reasons or whatever, haven't perhaps shown as highly as you might expect in other junior series, who have gone into it and done really well. It's an incredibly experienced grid, obviously, who have been racing them cars for years, so a rookie going into it is always a difficult sell. And I don't know if Red Bull actually really appreciate the task they're sort of handing their juniors to do. There is almost a thing, like the reason they send their juniors there is to build a relation with Honda as much as anything else.
Yeah.
Just to interrupt on that, I could be wrong, but hasn't he already done Super Formula testing and showed that he is on pace?
I
remember seeing that he did some form of testing. I'm pretty sure it was Super Formula, and he was on pace, if not one of the fastest.
It's possible, but the thing is, testing, and especially one lap pace that shows on the record books, isn't necessarily representative.
I agree with that, but I chose that it shows that he at least has a grasp of the... I mean, can we just call it an F2 car at this point?
Yeah. It's comparable.
Other than the engine, I'd say it's basically comparable.
And that's probably why they send it into it. But I agree with you, David. It's one that they do ask a lot of their junior drivers, but I think they get to the point where it almost becomes an obsession on super license points, because obviously the last one they majorly promoted young was Max Verstappen, and the super license points were pretty much introduced off the back of his introduction into F1 at 17. But for any driver it is a challenge, because it experienced grids and it's such a short round as well, that if you have a bad round, I think there's only 8 rounds to the series, so that if you do badly at one weekend, you can find yourself quite easily going from being in contention to out of contention quite quickly, which is unforgiving.
I remember a few years ago when Stoffel Van Dorn was competing in it, he got like 2 wins, but one of them was half points, which really sort of hit his attempt at winning the championship.
Yeah.
So it's not a lot of rounds, that's for sure.
No, which is crazy. But I think that rounds up Yuri VIPS quite nicely. We've had a solid introduction to this. We better not spend as long on every driver like this. But Yuri VIPS, I feel, is one who's worth taking a little bit more time on, because I do think he's a talent that will maybe one day make it into F1. The next one announced for Prema. Frederic Vesti, he's age 17, seasons in F3 is none. He is going to be a rookie in there. Notable successes is he came second in the Danish F4 in 2017, and he won the European Regional Formula last year. So I'll start with Mark this time. Thoughts on Frederic Vesti?
Extremely dominant drive in Formula Regional, but as we know from Drogovic, it's not always indicative of F3 performance. But I feel like because of the seat he is in, he's going to be a lot better than Drogovic. I'm not going to say he'll win the title outright, but I'm saying that he'll be a top-end driver, and he'll be definitely on the pace of the field.
And over to you, David.
Well, the thing is, he's going to be at Prema, a team he knows pretty well. He did come off the back of a very dominant season last year. How much of that is just things suiting him, I don't know. But obviously he does have a winning pedigree. The only thing is he's not a member of any academies or anything currently. Whether he'll get snapped up, I don't know. So budget-wise going forward, as far as getting into F1 goes, that's perhaps a negative, but he's certainly shown plenty of pace and lots of skill.
Yeah, and obviously I'll admit, when we get down to this level, my knowledge compared to both of yours on the drivers is less so, but and certainly winning one of the Euro formulas, it is a proving ground, and getting a top seat, he clearly is rated. Not being as part of an academy, this is generally, I think, where a lot of them get picked up. Only a few, I'm fair in saying, get picked up prior to making it to an F3 or equivalent level of racing.
I agree. I think you'll find most drivers get picked up around F4, Euro Formula, and about F3. That's when most get really picked up and like, okay, you're under our academy now.
Yeah.
So I mean, had a habit of picking up straight out of karting.
You don't really see that much anymore. I think the only team that's really focusing on low-level karting right now is Mercedes. I could be wrong, but I think Mercedes are the only team that actually has recognised karting academy drivers.
I thought Red Bull had a couple. Was Johnny Edgar one who was racing for them in karting recently?
I don't think so, because I actually have a list of recognised ones that I actually sent over to you, Mike, which I think helped you a bit.
Yeah. He wasn't on that list, I believe.
But I know they did do in the past, because when they picked up Sainz and Kvyat, it was like straight out of karting, basically. But yeah, current form, I'm not so sure then.
I think as it's progressed, they are waiting a little bit more because it is such a significant investment to get it through. And also, I believe the level potentially is getting higher. It may be too risky to say that, but it certainly seems more competing. So as a more competitive level, they can afford to hold off a little bit longer, probably before backing their horse, so to say. But we'll move on to the third ones to watch. Another driver who will be racing for Prema this year, and that is Logan Sergeant. He is 19 years old. He has had one season in F3 and finished 19th. I believe that was for Carlin last year. Was that right, David?
Yeah, that would be correct.
I remember talking about it in previous podcast. But yeah, notable successes. He was second in the UAE F4 in 2017, third in the British F4 in 2017, and came third in the Macau Grand Prix in 2019. So yeah, we'll go back to starting with you first, David. David, what are your thoughts on Logan Sergeant?
Solid. I mean, I think he's still sort of trying to get experience and whatever else together. I would have said I wasn't 100% sure about budget, but he's at Prema, and they don't tend to, they tend to have enough support behind them to end up being a team like that. Him actually getting there after last season is perhaps a bit of a surprise after his results, but I don't think Carlin were just on top of the car at all last year, and Prema have obviously seen something there that they like. When he was at Formula Renault, I thought he had a very good rookie year in that. He got beaten to the rookie title in the end, but in fact, he was still impressed, I thought.
And Mark, your thoughts on Logan?
I mean, it's hard to judge F3 driver on their previous season when they were racing for Carl, which we have to admit had a dreadful season last year in F3.
Yeah, they certainly did.
Off previous drives and experience, I can't see him winning the title this year. I see him as a solid. If I could put it in numbers, he's a 8 out of 10, 7.5. He's above average, but I just don't see the F1 level of driving in him at this stage.
Yeah, and I think with Logan, what he does have in his favour is, we spoke a little bit about the political side when we spoke about Guan Yu Zhao last week, in terms of he is United States nationality, and obviously that is a country that Liberty Media are heavily trying to invest in the market. And what is the best way to get people buying into F1 in a country that isn't already? It's by having a driver representing them in the sport. So I believe with obviously that horrible accident Juan Manuel Correa was involved in, he is the only American in F2 and F3 currently. Is that right?
Anyone I can think of.
Yeah, that's the only one off the top of my head. So I feel that plays in his favour to doors and opportunities that might open up. But I think Mark's analysis of him being kind of that 7.5, 8 out of 10 is probably fair. And like you said, it was a little bit harsh to judge him last year with how poorly Carlin did in F3 last year. But yeah,
going off previous results, it's hard to rave about him.
Yeah, he hasn't set the world alight, but you can be a late developer, and he's within a team like Prema, which gives him an absolutely fantastic performance, so therefore has to be classified as a ones to watch in F3 this year, because he's in one of the best teams in F3.
Well, they finished 1, 2, 3 in the championship last year. How much of that is just getting off to a better start than the other teams, I don't know. But they don't tend to have drivers who are anything other than decent there.
Exactly.
I guess we can actually compare him. He could surprise, because I don't think anyone thought Derivla was going to be as competitive as he was.
Yeah, so he could become the Derivla of the team, or if he does even better, it means that he's had an outstanding season, which in these junior categories you need to. But I think that probably rounds him up quite well. We now move on to Theo Pacher. I believe one of the youngest ones who will be on this list. Age 16, seasons in F3 none. He's obviously just got promoted in it. I believe he's ART he's been announced for, correct?
Yep, I believe so, and I'm a big fan of Theo Pacher.
And his notable successes is he won the French F4 in 2018 and won the ADAC F4 in 2019. So obviously we start with you last time, David, so this time we'll start off with Mark. Your thoughts on a guy you're clearly a big fan of?
He's a great driver. He was an absolute joy to watch in Formula 4 ADAC last year, and his battle with another driver for the title, which I'll bring up later, was one of the best title battles in a non-F1 series I've seen in a very, very long time. He's amazingly fast and also consistent. You could only argue that he's really only had 3 bad races in ADAC. Well, last year. I think he is possibly France's next F1 driver.
That's certainly a very endearing endorsement of Theo. So, David, your thoughts on Porsche?
Well, Mark's got his career numbers down a bit better than I have, to be quite honest with you. But so you don't win F4 ADAC series if you don't have some serious talent, because it's the F4 series in Europe, that and the Italian one, that everybody seems to go through. Even if they don't do a full series, they dip their toe in that one to race against the big drivers of that level. As I said, I don't have the numbers down as well as Mark does, but tight title battle, very young guy still. I don't think he's sort of any academy, but again, he could get picked up, and I'd be surprised if he didn't. Definitely looks good.
Back on the F4 title battle, I would say that his consistency won it for him. He only won it by 7 points.
Yeah.
He only had 3 non-point. I believe only 3 or 4 non-point scoring rounds.
Yeah, that was the impression I certainly got from it all. Anyway,
he is amazingly consistent and also fast, which is, it's what you want from a premier driver. But you just normally at this stage you either see fast and inconsistent, or consistent but not as fast. But it seems that Porsche has that balance.
Yeah.
Which at 16 years old is not a bad thing to have, a skill to have under your belt. And I think it is credit to the talent he is that, at 16 years old, they're giving him the keys to the machinery in F3, which, in getting backed in a big team like ART as well. Obviously, a French team, so having a strong young French driver in a French team is good for ART as well. But yeah, if he isn't picked up by an academy, he will certainly be one there. He probably unlikely maybe to challenge for the title in F3 this year.
I'm not saying he'll challenge. I mean, he very well could. The ART car is capable of it, but it all depends how he finds his footing. If he finds it well, he could certainly challenge, but if he takes time to, I think he could be a late season pusher for a top 5 spot.
Yeah, he is certainly a talent.
Sorry.
No, go ahead, David.
I'm saying ART's driver lineup is a bit of a weird one, because the driver I'd have said was probably not the best out of the 3 is the one with the year's experience. So it's like the 2 better drivers are less experienced. So I don't know from a title point of view where they'd necessarily be going with that lineup, but I think he's got as much chance as anyone else in that squad, and it is a very experienced team. So whether they'd be getting behind him more than they perhaps might have done otherwise, I don't know.
It'll certainly be very interesting to see how it plays out for him, but he certainly is a talent to look out for in the future if he progresses like his previous junior Formula experience would suggest. We now move on to Aleksandr Schmoyer, age 18. He is a Russian-born driver. Season F3, none. He hasn't competed in F3 before. Notable successes for him are the Euro Cup Formula Renault 2019, he came 3rd, SMP F4 NEZ Championship 3rd, and Spanish F4 came in 3rd as well. So, David, we'll start with you this time. Your thoughts on Aleksandr Schmoyer?
Very competitive guy. Very quick as well. I think he was a little bit unlucky with 3rd place last year in Formula Renault. He did have some bad luck moments. I think it was the first race at Silverstone where he had an awesome battle with Oscar Piastri at the start of the race and was leading it and then broke down.
This is Silverstone the second round? I thought they opened that Monza.
Yeah. No, I meant the first race of the weekend, sorry. Yeah. I must have got carried away there. Apologies.
We'll forgive you, David. We'll forgive you.
Because his opening round at Monza was also nothing to write home about.
But it's like, it's a consistency thing, I think, with him. When he's hot. But he does have the odd weekend, which dented his championship last year. But he was on the pace before leading to, certainly.
His issue. He was fast, but he wasn't consistent. But his opponents in the title were both fast and, I'd say, pretty consistent.
Yeah.
And I think this is very much a thing that you'll see with those junior drivers, and it is so tough because, you know, these guys are teenagers or just young adults, like just turning 18, and it's crazy. You're asking them to just perform at the levels of a seasoned pro athlete, of being the consistent performer, like obviously Robert Schwartzman did in F3 last year. But you'd probably compare Aleksandr Schmoyer more to a Marcus Armstrong in terms of he has the natural pace, but he just is lacking that consistency at the moment, and it's whether he can get that to kind of all fall into place.
That'd be my read on it, yeah. He's got a title in him if he can get it all together.
I mean, I still rate Teo Pourchaire as more likely to be a title contender than Schmoyer, personally.
Mm.
I think that's probably a fair assessment of the two. Well, Theo Pourchaire obviously has a 100% record at the moment. Every championship he's entered, he's won. So,
I mean,
it's not bad. Would you go about it, is it?
I mean, looking at just the stats, and from what I've seen, I'd rate it Teo, Alexander, then Sebastian.
Yeah.
That would be fair, I think, an assessment. But we now move on to the last one that I've got listed before I let Mark take over the lead of the podcast, and that is Zane Maloney, age 15, seasons F3 none. He may or may not compete in F3 because he is the current British F4 champion 2019. I believe he was crowned. David, you'll know this one better. Did he secure it in Silverstone, or was it did he have to go to the last round?
The season in the end, but I could be wrong.
I thought from memory it got in there, but I can talk about Zane Maloney because I actually saw him this year. So he's one of the young guns. That's the main reason I included him in this. So obviously, winner of the British F4 this year. At the Silverstone race I saw, it was the penultimate round of the season. And it was very challenging conditions. In the rain, it was kind of mixing from dry to wet to dry. You know, it would suddenly kind of get out. But he kind of drove very mature in both races. I think he came second in the first race, just wasn't able to close the lead. But then Alvarez, his nearest title contender at the time, I believe crashed into him on that, not deliberately. He didn't pull a tictum. But yeah, I believe they were coming through Brooklands round Luffield, and yeah, Alvarez had attempted a bold move, went across the grass, and they just kind of kept going straight on into Maloney, so took them both out, which I believe then took the championship decider to the last round at Brands Hatch. But he seemed a very mature and very controlled, consistent driver, methodical in the moves that he made, had a very good judgment in racecraft from the brief stuff I've seen. What are your thoughts? I'll go with Mark on this one, if you have some thoughts on good old Zane.
He's very good. He's impressive, considering what he achieved in his rookie year. As much as I'd love to see him in F3, well, the main F3 series, I don't think he's ready yet. But I also think he's better than British F3. I can see him going to either ADAC or Euro Formula, possibly the Renault Cup. I mean, they've changed the name, so often I'll just call it Formula Renault. But I can see him going to one of the three European well, some would call it a step aside, but I'd still call it a step up in competition.
Yeah, I think that's fair to say. And David, your thoughts on Zane?
Well, I love British F3, but we'll leave that to another conversation. Yeah,
I'm not knocking it. I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying there's possibly better options in British F3 for him.
That's that triangle pyramid thing up to F1 again, which I think we've talked about in the past. Yeah, as into where does it actually fit? But yeah, no, I know what you mean. Formula Renault or Formula Regional European seems most likely to me, to be honest.
I mean, I could see him doing ADAC just to prove himself against the best.
That's possible
of his age group, but I mean, I don't think he has a team backing him yet. So he could go to Formula Renault, because I believe isn't the price for winning that a temporary contract with Renault? Normally, yeah. It has been in the past. So the only guy I know who didn't take that was Lando Norris, but he had so many offers on the table at the time, you know. Yeah. So that's why I think the Formula Renault may be the most sensible move for a driver in his position. Yeah, that would make sense.
Yeah, and that rounds off the guys that I know. I was quite happy to put my Zane Maloney in there in terms of my feeder knowledge. Hi guys, so what we've done is we've decided to split this into a two-parter. So next week we will give you the second part of the video coming out for this F3 ones to watch, and with other ones to watches wrapped up in well. So I hope you've enjoyed this first part of the episode. Please do let us know in the comments down below what you thought of the drivers that we listed in today's video. We would love to hear from you, and do you agree on our thoughts on those drivers? From there, obviously Mark and David with their great expertise and knowledge on the drivers that they've brought in this episode. But that's it for today, guys. So if you've liked it, please give it a thumbs up. If you are new around here, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Click that bell notification to keep up to date with all our latest content, with obviously the feeder series and all the F1 content we do as well. But for now, you F1 fans, keep racing.